Hello, Alyssa Farah Griffin.
Hello, Brian Teta.
It is Monday. It is Super Bowl Monday, which, in my opinion, should be a national holiday of some kind. This
100%.
It is brutal. I'm sorry. It starts too late in the day. Even if you're just watching at home, you're staying up late.
Totally. Also, just move it to President's Day since people are off anyway.
I think that's going to happen, and they'll add another week of football, and it'll make everybody happy. I mean, it's too much.
It's too much. No, that's an executive order everyone could get on board with.
I think
make it
so.
a federal holiday. Nobody's working after the Super Bowl.
That and the plastic straws, I have to say. I was a little bit like, okay.
I know.
Well,
Guy has a point
I
here.
do care about the environment, but those are awful.
Right.
All right. How did you spend your Super Bowl Sunday?
We watched with neighbors in my new neighborhood. We have like an awesome group of people.
Look at you being social.
I know, in the burbs. Yeah, surprisingly way more young people than I thought in my town. But our neighbors had us over. So much fun. Nobody really cared about either team. Like, I was rooting for the Chiefs because of Taylor Swift, but I don't really care one way or the other. So my low point is it was just kind of a boring game in that the Eagles just crushed them so hard that it didn't feel competitive at any point. But it was still fun to watch. I just find it is like a pop cultural moment, the commercials, the music. I mentioned, like, I thought Lady Gaga was just spectacular.
She was great
at the beginning. So I had a good time.
Yeah.
I drank IPA, though. I'm not really a beer person, and I had 2 IPAs, and I'm like, whew.
Is your husband an IPA?
Yes.
I got that vibe. Yeah, I got that vibe. I went to a friend's house, and my daughter was in a play in the morning, and there was a second showing. I skipped
So you got out of the
showing,
second, okay.
And she was just in the ensemble for that one. It was fine. And then I went to a buddy's house who had a party, and he did a great job. Shout out to the View fans, Jen Mayhofer and her husband. Thank you. But I very quickly, as you know, I enjoy gambling a little bit, legal gambling, and I won the coin toss. And then lost
downhill.
Everything else after that.
Yeah. I did read my husband in on your dilemma of your daughter's in a play. Do you miss half of the Super Bowl? Do you watch on your phone? And he's like, oh, no. Like, you would stay at the play because you don't care about football, and I would go home and watch the game.
That's exactly what happened.
We totally agreed because I don't care nearly as much.
Given what happened in the game, I probably should have stayed for
it was less painful.
So you mentioned your girl and mine, Taylor Swift. She got booed.
She did. Okay, so I've got to do some pushback here.
Okay.
She got booed because half of the crowd are Eagles fans, and you're dating one of the star players.
Maybe
of the
even
Chiefs.
more than half of the crowd.
Yeah, maybe even more. I don't think this was anything broader than that.
There's no
but I would remind people,
backlash?
No, there's not a national backlash. She packed out that exact same stadium 3 nights in a row just a couple months ago in the Eras tour. Like, there is not a shortage of people who absolutely love Taylor Swift.
Right.
And while I was watching with neighbors, everyone had their kids kind of running around. Like, seeing young girls, like under 10, who they're watching. They're like, are they going to show Taylor? Are they going to show Taylor? I think it's a cool way to introduce girls to the sport who maybe didn't grow up watching football, but it's bringing them into the fold. So no, people still love Taylor, and she was a totally good sport about it.
She was.
It's funny. It's going to become a meme.
What's happening? Now, I don't think she's used to being booed. And then the other questionable booing, cheering, it felt like cheering to me when they showed the president during the anthem. I mean,
it did.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I wasn't going to say it on the show today because I didn't feel like choosing violence on a Monday. Trump's the most popular he's ever been. For those of us who don't support him, it might be like a tough pill to swall, but he's got a 56% approval rating.
Which, historically, not great.
It's not in the grand scheme of things. And by the way,
yeah.
that will go down. You start when you enter office is your high water mark.
Right.
And then from there, everything hits you. People get annoyed. But he's somebody that does have support in this country. But I also I stand by what I said on Friday's show when we were talking about, Travis Kelce saying he was honored to have him. I also think the Super Bowl is a celebration of America, and that there were definitely people who cheered because it's the American president who didn't vote for Trump. That's just a fact. There's a certain reverence we've generally had for our presidents that I think is part of what was shown. So long story short, no major tides change on Taylor Swift, no major tide change on Donald Trump. It's just people's reaction.
It is interesting because he's definitely putting himself in these cultural events. He's showing up at the Super Bowl. I think he's going to the Daytona 500.
Yeah.
It's deliberate, I guess.
Yeah. He named himself the chair of the Kennedy Center, which that might be Beltway, but it's a big deal because the biggest artists in the world want to get inducted into the Kennedy Center honors and all that. But he's writing himself into pop culture in a way that he didn't really in the first term.
That's interesting for sure. I've been to the Kennedy Center a couple of times for people that were being inducted or the Mark Twain Prize and things like that. It's a big deal. It's a big honor. And it's curious to see if he's the chair of the Kennedy Center, what kind of people are we going to be inducting? And
that's what I was curious. Well, somebody said like Grateful Dead got in by a hair because they were inducted just a couple months ago. Because or the surviving members, like you kind of do wonder if there would be artists that then would protest or not want to participate, or that like if he has a heavy hand in choosing, is it like Kid Rock gets inducted?
Kid Rock gets the Kennedy Center?
Yeah.
I mean, very possibly. I guess we'll see what happens. But it is him kind of imposing his will on the culture in a way that think about it. He's always been a major pop culture figure, but then the first time he was president, I think he was so divisive that like the mainstream of pop culture was rejecting him. And I think this time he's coming in sort of like seeing how much he can just put himself into it. Well, I'm curious, for instance, you talk about that, and you're right. Definitely Hollywood distanced itself from him during his first term. Now, if the Chiefs won, I'm pretty sure most of them would have been at the White House. I don't know that the Eagles are going to go. It'll be curious to see.
Yeah.
And that's too bad. If I understand why they wouldn't go.
Yeah.
But I also, that's an honor, and they should get to experience that too. So we'll see.
I know.
What they
I always
choose.
feel a little bad for for athletes who get caught up in the political dramas with that, because it is sort of like beyond winning the Super Bowl. That's like a once in a lifetime thing that you get to tell your grandkids you did. But I would imagine there would definitely be some, at least, who wouldn't go.
And we'll fall into this. They announced who's going to be at the White House Correspondents' Dinner hosting it. Will he go to that? He didn't. His first
I bet
term.
he won't.
Yeah,
I feel like he'll do some kind of counter programming.
It was our friend Amber Ruffin who's going to be hosting it. So
yeah, I see him doing some kind of counter programming.
Yeah, it will be interesting. Before we move on from the Super Bowl entirely, what did you think of the Kendrick Lamar performance?
Okay, I loved it. I love Kendrick Lamar though, and I'm going to be honest. The friends I was with, not hip hop fans other than my husband who loves Kendrick Lamar. So I did see a little bit of the like, oh, okay, it's good, but it like wasn't maybe for everyone the way that like when you have collaborations and like different genres kind of together. But I thought he was excellent. I just couldn't get over like the Drake shade of it.
Yeah.
Like I want to know the roots of their hatred, because like I would be so terrified to be that hated by anyone.
Yes.
That they're like, he's like, I'm going to just destroy you with a stadium of people chanting about you and your ex-girlfriend.
In the biggest audience possible in the world.
And I like Drake too. I don't know why he ever thought he would win a battle against Kendrick Lamar though.
Well, there was a big pro-Drake movement a couple years ago.
He's a great musician, but like he's not hard. He's Canadian and he was in Degrassi. Like you're not going to win.
But
this
he was great
battle.
in Degrassi. I mean, he got in the wheelchair. It was, there was a lot going on there.
I wanted to clear a meme related to Degrassi and Drake for the show, but it didn't make it onto the
I'm
airwaves.
sorry for that. Love Degrassi. All right, let's go back to politics with a question from a listener, Jonathan in Missouri. As a Democrat, I don't always agree with Alyssa, but I love hearing her perspective. So I want to know what she thinks Democrats need to do to retake Congress in the midterms. What does she think are the biggest strengths and weaknesses of the Dem Party? Thanks, and I love the podcast. #BryGuy.
Oh, stop. We met a Bry Guy at Joy's opening night.
We met a Bry Guy. Yes, we'll do that. Yeah,
there
that was
are
amazing.
Bry Guys. They're everywhere. So, I mean, big picture, I think that Democrats are playing an outdated playbook just on the messaging campaign. I think that they're operating in traditional media. They're thinking that if you go on, the CNNs or the Meet the Presses or give impassioned floor speeches and maybe tweet something, it's going to break through. And just not the environment we live in anymore. So, first things first, who are you trying to communicate to? Not the people who are already with you. Like, yes, you need to energize and give a plan of action to people who are also mad, but you need to reach as many people as you can. So go to unfriendly audiences, go on some of the podcasts that help decide this election. But I guess before you do all that, you need to decide what your message is. I feel in my bones that Dems have overplayed their hand in making everything about Trump. And I think they risk this with Elon Musk. People know who Trump is. They have an opinion of him, whether good or bad. They need to identify what the problem is. And I think getting back to sort of the core of what used to be what Democrats stood for is the rich are getting richer, the powerful are getting more powerful, and everyone's getting left behind. That encapsulates Trump and Elon Musk, but you don't need to make it constantly about them and those personalities. It makes it much more people-driven than like the, boogeymen that you identify. And then talk about what you're for at least as much as you're talking about what you're against. People need to feel like there's an alternative to vote for. That's something I struggle with, because I mentioned there are things I agree with that Trump does, and then there are things that I'm horrified by that he does. But there's not an alternative for me on the other side, because it's at times unclear, like, what is the plan? What are you for? What is the proactive agenda? And I think they need to harness that. And It doesn't need to be one spokesperson. You don't need to have, this is our person, but Dems need to be singing from the same sheet of music. And final thing I'll say is this. Be careful of not sounding like Berkeley professors. Like, democracy matters, but like explaining to somebody, you know, when they're struggling to make ends meet or they feel like their healthcare costs are too high, democracy becomes this vague thing that like saying it's on the ballot doesn't feel real. Like, we still were able to vote in this election and Trump was elected. So like, take it back to the core issues that actually affect people day to day and tell them what your solutions are on it.
Last week, you said on the podcast that you were surprised Democrats weren't fighting back more against Trump's executive orders. Are you seeing that change now, in your opinion? I mean, we saw some protests and some movement with, Maxine Waters at the, that kind of thing.
I feel very strongly that there's going to be organic movement against Trump that emerges in the first or second quarter of this year. But I think it's going to be more people-driven than politician-driven.
You're seeing an uptick of people calling the Congress people and things like that, complaints about Elon.
And there have been some protests in cities. They've been nothing like what we saw in 2017. But I think that there's a lack of trust in politicians in general. People felt like Dems were scaring us if you won't have a country if you vote for him. Trump was scaring us, you won't have a country if you vote for them. And I think that the backlash to feeling like he's overstepping, he's going against things Congress voted for is going to be people driven. But then the smart next generation politicians are going to figure out how to harness that and speak to those people. One person I'm like very impressed with and I'd like to have on the show, who I don't agree with on much of anything, is Congressman Ro Khanna, who's like a member of the Progressive Caucus, but he seems to talk about issues like a human and is good at like recognizing like you can't just demonize people because they make a lot of money, or you can't just demonize people because they're men. You have to talk to them about issues and solutions. I think you're going to see some new kind of stars emerge on the left. With due respect, I think very highly of Chuck Schumer. We've had him on. Chuck Schumer is not going to be leading the charge that brings Democrats over the finish line in the midterms.
Right. Are people like AOC in your mind too progressive, or do you think it's someone like that?
She has a role in it, but she's too progressive to be the face of it. This was my concern, honestly, with like the DNC elections. I watched the Georgetown University candidate forum, and again, I'm not a Democrat, so I can't speak to what Democrats want, but there was a lot of wanting to put people in boxes. So we're going to have, the Arab community this, the trans community this person here. Like, there has to be a way to be like, so we all share concerns, but let's be together on them, not these boxes we want to put people in. And then with like the elections, I actually don't know a ton about the new chairman. Maybe he'll come on our show at some point. But even with David Hogg being the vice chair, somebody I admire. He is a young activist. I think so highly of any young person who gets into the political sphere. But this is somebody who's defund the police. Like, all of the things Dems ran away from this past election are things that he was articulating in some of this new leadership was. So I think they have to figure out like.
It seems like there's a swath of people who think that the next Democratic leader is going to be someone non-traditional in the same way that it has been for Donald Trump. It's going to be a celebrity or a business leader or somebody like that comes out. Do you think that's possible?
I think it's possible. I think people feel like the politicians got us here, and we need something different and outside the box. And I could definitely see a roadmap for that, or somebody who is a politician, but they're not traditional in how they communicate and conduct themselves. I think of Wes Moore, governor of Maryland, who I think is a star.
Terrific, yeah.
But he doesn't come off like a politician. He was like a football player. He'll go train with like, I don't know, was it the Ravens or University? Like with some of these, like he'll go like somebody who can be a human being, and it's not focus group message tested, so afraid of pissing off any one group. Like,
he's incredibly charismatic.
Yeah,
I will say
he's got the charisma and the chops. So someone like that I think could be interesting.
I was always impressed by Josh Shapiro too, I have to say.
I still love him, but every sign I've seen from Democrats is they're not moderating. They're going to go super lefty.
Well, we'll see. All right. We had on the, I'm going to change gears here. We had on the cast of Queer Eye today, which was fun. They talked about their message of unity for the LGBTQ plus community and how that show is able to bring people together who might think differently or think that they are different. You love the show. Why do you think it's so popular?
I love it. So I've always said that politics is downstream from culture. Culture actually has a better and quicker ability to change people's hearts and minds than politics ever will. And like the old, like, my early generation example was like Will and Grace being on TV was just normal representation to people who maybe didn't have gay friends or people in their lives to be like, oh, this is what a gay couple is like. It's fun. These people could be in my community. And the massive tide shift, you think, of the public's opinion on marriage equality.
Right.
It moved faster than probably any other political issue in modern time because people started to see people from those communities. They started to have friends and relationships, and it made it seem like this is something we want to embrace. Queer Eye has that, and then on top of it, it's just so heartfelt. Like they literally go to people's like houses who are like so it takes place in Las Vegas. So a lot of people in the restaurant industry, like service-based industry, took hard hits after COVID, are struggling financially, and they come in and they give them just little makeovers just to make things look a little bit nicer in where they live. And you just could see how it touches everyone, and like it's honestly one of the best shows on television. Like anytime I'm feeling down, that's what I'll watch, and it just cheers you up. So it's excellent. And I loved meeting Jeremiah, who's the newest cast member. Yeah. He's perfection. Like he literally cries every episode because you see how deeply he feels what he's like watching and getting to be part of. So it's the feel good TV that we need, but it's also the, reminding people that like we can look different, we can come from different backgrounds, but like as long as we love each other and treat each other with dignity and respect, then we should be able to live together happily.
Absolutely. All right. Now let's get down to business because we went, along with many of the other hosts, to the premiere of Joy's play last week. My first ex-husband. What did you think?
So I loved it.
I loved it too.
Okay, so I was, this might sound silly, I was blown away by what a good writer Joy is. Because I know her as funny comedian and performer, like on the show and like throughout her career. But like she wrote all of those because it's a series of monologues that tell different stories, but all like kind of thematically tied together. They're so well written because you get lost in the characters. Like it doesn't need, any fancy production. Like it is. And
they all have real life bases to them.
Yes.
And I've gotten some tea on
I know.
who's who.
There was some that I was like, interesting.
Yeah.
I thought it was so good and like quite funny. Like, and I always feel like I'm the loudest person laughing at those things, and I try to.
That would be Sarah
in.
Haynes.
Actually, but then there were a few that were like really heartfelt. Like it has something for everyone.
It has emotion. No, and I
it
think
gets a little dirty at parts too.
A little dirty.
I was literally thinking. I was
dirty.
like, our big bosses are here. Like, don't look around.
No. I was shocked at how dirty it got.
Even like I think the dirtiest was one that Joy delivered, which made it even better.
Yes, but hysterical. So funny.
Yeah.
I was very proud. There was a little party afterwards, and we met a bride guy, which was very exciting.
We did. Okay, so the show, amazing. The after party was so much fun. Said bride guy is an attorney who sometimes when he's killing time in court whenever he's killing time in court, will watch or listen to Behind the Table.
I love it.
And I invited him. I'm like, come to the show anytime.
Yeah,
We've got lawyers who are fans. We've got everything.
I heard he said, don't tell Brian, but I'm a bride guy, and then you guys called me over immediately.
Like, come on, we found him.
Yes, he exists.
Yeah.
But you said to me when we were there that you were like kind of impressed by how cool Joy is. Not that you were surprised by it, but like she's got like a cool friend group.
No, you realize that like, well, also New York cool is cooler than anywhere else cool, and she's got this like elite squad of like New York women who've been around in like comedy, actors, like for some time.
Baryshnikov was there?
Yes, of Sex and the City fame.
Diane Sawyer. Yeah, I mean, it's all like
Diane
Alexander
Sawyer
Petrovsky.
was there.
Yeah.
I like bumped into Diane Sawyer. I was just like, I'm just happy to be near you. But just like a really Judy Gold, who I think is hilarious.
Susan Lucci, La Luce.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
no, I was like, it made me like, I wish I like got to know Joy when she was like first coming up in the city and like when she got into stand up, because I bet she was very fun. She's still very fun.
Yeah, she's the most fun. She's great. But I was impressed. And then for me, the biggest moment, so we took photos and things like that. And there's a thing in People magazine where they have the stars that were listed, and it says other stars in attendance. That Mikhail Baryshnikov, Diane Sawyer, and View executive producers, host of the Behind the Table podcast, Brian Teta. In the same sentence,
podcast.
The same sentence as Mikhail Baryshnikov, which
amazing.
Is never going to happen again.
Amazing.
That was very cool.
Well, and we got a picture with Sherry Shepherd and Star Jones.
Yeah,
so we
that
had
was
like
fun to
old
have
school
everybody
view
together.
There. Yeah,
it was really
people
really good.
turned out for her. It was so much fun.
Yeah, I had a great time, and you had a headache and were almost late. Well, you were late.
I was late, and then I had to sit by myself. I couldn't make it to where the hosts were. I would have had to like go down every single host. I'm like, excuse me.
You were awkwardly in the corner for a while, but
which was probably appropriate for me. They're like, oh, they didn't save a seat for Alyssa.
No,
how awkward.
Did.
No,
they did. It was great. We had so much fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today.
Wait, can I say one thing I forgot to say on the Kendrick Lamar? Okay, because some people are like bashing Kendrick Lamar's performance and saying like, who is this for? So on, whatever. It was excellent. The only people who didn't maybe love it, I think it's generational. I think he's somebody who's going to have generational appeal and like be known the way that like Dr. Dre or Snoop Dogg and some of those are. He's just not there yet because he's newer in it. Because I did find some of like all my friends' parents are like, and my mom is like, okay, so what's his deal? What's his deal? That's all it was. It was not, I don't think it was a criticism of him at all. I thought it was an excellent performance. It was more that he's like still such a rising star that there's like room for him to go into the stratosphere.
Well, and it was great, and he had some big surprises. It was like Serena Williams and SZA, but like he didn't like jump off the top of the building like Lady Gaga,
and that's
you
what
know.
People,
and that's what some people feel like if you don't have that, it's not.
Yeah, but I objectively thought it was a good show.
Terrific. Yeah, no, I thought so too. Okay.
All right,
that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining me today, Alyssa. Tomorrow I'll be back with Joy Behar, and we are going to get into her play, and particularly, she's a little smutty. I'm just going to get it out there. We're going to get into that, so we're going to talk about it. All right, and we'll see you then.